Today I effed up by exposing a 50-year-old family secret. Hi, I'm your host Rachel, and welcome to Snacks and Scandals, where snacks meet Reddit story scandals. Today is National Burrito Day, and we will be enjoying a Chipotle Sofritas burrito. Delicious. And to go along with National Burrito Day, you've got your filling inside there. You don't necessarily know what's going on. It can get messy at times. Our theme is family secrets. So before we dive into our stories, I hope you'll join me with your own snack or your own burrito, even for National Burrito Day. We are going to cut in and give our burrito a try because I am very excited. So let's cut it in half and see what we're working with. We're going to be working with deliciousness. I do know that. Oh yeah, so they put a lot of guacamole on there. It looks divine. And it is going to get messy, just like these family stories. Okay. Let me move my bag. I've got some napkins underneath. It's so good. The flavor from the sofritas. I'm not vegan or vegetarian or anything. I just love the sofritas. Burritos in the burrito. But it's got a little bit of spice. I did put some queso in here with the rice and the guac. So it's definitely going to get fairly messy. And there we go. We are already losing the innards of our burrito. Tell me what your favorite burrito is. Do you even like burritos? Do you like them smothered? I mean, there's so many ways to have a burrito, right? You can even do will it burrito. Let's dive into our very first story. Today I effed up by exposing a 50-year-old family secret. My wife's parents have never been easy to shop for at Christmas. They always did well financially, and we didn't. If they wanted something, they just bought it. But a few years ago, they retired at the same time my wife and I started doing better, so we decided to actually get them something big, in addition to our usual pictures of the kids. My mother-in-law had always been into genealogy. She had been building her own family tree for a few years on Ancestry and had talked about getting a DNA test. But she kept saying that $100 was a bit much to spend on answers she already knew. So I asked my wife what she thought about getting each of her parents a DNA kit for Christmas. She thought it was a great idea, so we picked up a couple. Christmas morning comes around and we make the trek to the in-laws' house. We had dinner, visited, looked at pictures, the things you do at family gatherings. Finally, the time came for gift exchange. My father-in-law and mother-in-law both opened their gifts. My mother-in-law got really quiet for a couple of seconds before speaking up. Oh, thank you. I've really been thinking about this, but didn't want to spend the money. Now that I have one, I guess I'll do it. The rest of the day was spent just hanging out and visiting. Nothing else was said about the tests. A couple of days later, my wife and I were sitting in the living room when her phone rang. She looked at me and she'd said she'd be right back. She went into our bedroom and closed the door. After about half an hour, I had to go in there to use the bathroom. She was still on the phone, so I walked through quickly. When I got out, she was sitting on the bed with a blank stare and a half smile on her face. "Are you okay?" Silence. She looked at me dead in the eye, grinned ear to ear, and said, "I have a brother!" Now, my wife and I had been together for over 25 years at this point. I know her extended family as much as I know my own. She has one sister, that's it. Her parents were married when they were in their early 20s, and my wife was born soon after. I was trying to figure out when they would have had a son. Oh crap, your mom got pregnant when she was a teenager, didn't she? Yep, She was sent to a convent to have the baby, and she was adopted out in a closed adoption. Her sister took a DNA test about a year ago, and he showed up as her nephew. My mom knew she couldn't keep it a secret any longer. That explains why she hesitated when we gave her the DNA kit. She knew there'd be an immediate connection. Yeah. Since then, we've met and come to know the person in our family, and things have been pretty solid with all of us. As long as we don't discuss politics or religion, I think that goes for most groups of people. My father-in-law knew about this before they got married 50 years ago, but they just never talked about it. My mother-in-law spent over 50 years being really scared about revealing this family secret. Getting pregnant out of wedlock was super taboo in much of the US in the 1960s. It all ended up coming out okay, but I still consider this an F up because I inadvertently opened a closed closet of skeletons that I didn't even know existed. Luckily, everything turned out okay with that one, and it wasn't too, frowned upon. I think in this day and age, this was posted 3 years ago, but in this day and age, it's more accepting when pregnancies happen out of marriage, and it's actually probably quite common. I don't know what the percentage is, but let's dive into some comments. One commenter wrote, I did a genealogy test with 2 of my 4 sisters. I also have 2 brothers right before I turned 50. Turned out I was just their half brother. Found out my mom had an affair when dad was fighting in Vietnam, and I was the result. Oh my goodness. If you have any of your own stories to tell, please comment below. I would love to hear about them. I can't imagine. I did do a DNA test. I don't mind having my DNA out there. It's fine with me. And I don't have any exciting family secrets that came about with this. And I'm just a boring European. So I thought maybe there would be something more to me. But yeah, I'm like English and Irish majority and some other things mixed in there. But just a boring European. Another commenter writes, adopted in 1966, found my bio family through 23andMe. Bio mom and I made a good connection. She didn't have any other children. We are very similar personality-wise. She's like a fun aunt at this point. Bio dad has 3 other children. They have never reached out. Very closed off, only communicate through an email address shared with his wife. I think she feels threatened. I was very clear that I was only looking for a friendship type connection. I have a family, the one that adopted me as a baby. Just enjoy your additional family members. And I think that that's a good point. Some people may have ulterior motives. Maybe they want to get into that family inheritance or ask for money or whatever it might be. But go into it with an open set of eyes, and not everybody's in it for ulterior motives. Let's read a couple more comments. I had near the same exact thing happen to me at 50. I was at a family friend's funeral. I got a text from my aunt on my dad's side. My first thought was something happened to my grandmother, as I never hear from my aunt unless something bad happens. Yeah, those family members when they call and it's like, oh, just panic, She asked me to take an ancestry DNA test since my dad had been dead for a few years because she was contacted by someone who claims she was his aunt. Long story short, I found out I had a half-brother 6 months younger than I. Wow, some people are active and the DNA is bringing out all of the skeletons from the closet. I want to have another bite of my messy burrito. That first story wasn't too messy, but it could have gone that way. Luckily, everybody had an open mind, and yeah, I need bigger plates. It's so good. So good. Yes. I have not had Chipotle in a couple of months. And one of their burritos, it's been probably years since I've had a burrito. So let's dive into our next story. Today I effed up by getting a DNA test and revealing a family secret. How often does this happen? My goodness. I've always been interested in doing one of those at-home kits that tell you your ethnicity estimates. That's why I did mine. My mother has, for many years, claimed that her own great-grandmother was completely Native American. And I recently learned that this is apparently something common for Southerners to claim, but that it is rarely true. I finally went ahead and bought one of the kits because there is nothing I enjoy more in life than proving my mother wrong. Yeah, I think a lot of us can probably say that same thing. Fast forward a few weeks, I get my results. I am 0% Native American, which isn't exactly shocking. The real surprise comes from the fact that I am also 0% Eastern European. This probably wouldn't mean much for most people, but I happen to be Polish, or at least I thought I was. I have an unpronounceable, very Polish name. My great-grandparents were Polish-speaking immigrants. My paternal grandfather himself spoke Polish as a child. My first thought was that the test was a mistake. My results came over a week before the projected arrival date, and I knew I should be somewhere around 25% Polish/Eastern European. So maybe there had been an error somewhere in the lab. I started digging around through my DNA relative matches. I had matched with an extended cousin with my mom's maiden name, living in the state that she grew up in, so the DNA analyzed was definitely mine. This was not a switched tube situation. There were only two possible explanations. Either my own dad was not my biological father, or my Polish grandfather was not the biological father of my dad. I look a lot like my father, so it seemed unlikely that we were not related. However, there was no strong family resemblance between my dad and his own father. In fact, my grandfather and many of his siblings had a, we'll call it, striking nose that my sister and I had often rejoiced in not inheriting. Also, my paternal grandparents had a disastrous marriage and bitter divorce. An affair did not seem out of the question. My paternal grandfather died over 10 years ago, but my paternal grandmother is still living and I gave her a call. It took a while for me to fully explain the DNA testing to her. She's 87, but we got there. She denied it and tried to explain the unexpected results with a long ramble about migrating European tribes before I was finally able to make her understand that I would be able to test relatives from the Polish side of the family and determine whether or not I was actually related to them. She told me that she didn't think that was a good idea and I should think about it before contacting anyone. I think I knew it right then, but it was not until today, 2 days later, that she finally admitted it to my sister. My father had been lied to about it his entire life about his biological father. So who is my actual paternal grandfather? To be determined. My grandmother promised my sister that she will tell the two of us everything when my sister gets into town for Christmas. She requested that we not tell anyone until after. It's too late, my sister already told everyone. Ooh, what's going on, Grandma? You know, it's women step out, men step out. Unfortunately, it can be more obvious when the woman steps out if it results in a pregnancy, but it's interesting that Grandma just didn't own up to it, but you know, she was probably going to go to her grave and she thought she was close, but she wasn't close enough. Is that terrible of me to say? Some comments read, we found out that a neighbor kid growing up down the street from my mom and her 5 brothers in Boston was actually their half-brother. Our grandpa had an affair with the lady down the way, and the poor boy was told when his parents died, but never told my family. Our new uncle finally let us all know the day of our grandfather's funeral, telling the family he had promised his mother to keep it a secret until then. Of course, this posed the interesting situation of my grandmother learning of her husband's affair 65 years ago. And also realizing the boy she had over to play with her children for years, and even once kissed my mother before he knew, was the product of said affair. We expected fireworks. Instead, her response is one I still am amazed by. What a blessing. I have another son. She passed away 2 years later, firmly having accepted him as one of her own. I think that is so sweet, and I really wonder how many people just accept it and rejoice in the fact that, you know, maybe they have additional family members out there. That's got to be kind of exciting maybe at least initially, but who knows? Maybe sometimes things don't quite work out that well for a lot of people. Another person writes, I think a lot of people would be astonished to see their true genetic family tree overlaid on their historical one. Very true. I found out I was a doorstep baby, and the lies running through the generations before ours are mind-boggling. Oh my gosh. The secrets that the DNA, 23andMe, and those other DNA companies have uncovered are probably immense. Somebody else writes, I just got a DNA test. I had the choice of making my results private or public. There was a warning that if I make the results public, you might discover previously unknown relatives. It makes me wonder, it's been so long since I did my DNA test. I should log in there and see. I don't know if it does show relatives, but I should look. It's been quite a few years. Okay, let's read one last comment. It's pretty intriguing to dig deeper and find out what kinds of weird crap your ancestors have been up to. That's a good way to put it. The entirety of my mother's side back 3 generations isn't supposed to exist per se. My maternal grandmother was born out of an affair with a married man. So somewhere in the US is an entire family that doesn't realize their skeezy grandfather / great-grandfather butted a whole branch on their family tree by sleeping around, LOL. My mom is the family genealogist, and she's found living relatives of the main tree we're inadvertently a part of. She thinks it's probably best we never get in touch with them. Okay, just one last comment. Somebody has a reply to that. I'm in a similar situation. My maternal grandfather was born out of wedlock, and his mother never admitted who his father was, but did receive regular payments from a gentleman who was either the father or acting as a middleman. My brother got a DNA test, and my mother has been using that information for genealogy. Well, she found out a genetic relative that didn't fit and realized this was likely the son of my papa's mystery father. So she contacted him about it. Yeah, people on the internet don't take kindly to random messages suggesting their dad had another child. I would imagine that's probably the case. I don't think I would have any other siblings. I would say the people in my family were fairly straight shooters. So, but who knows? Maybe something will come up for me in the future. Has something come up for any of you out there watching? Okay, I haven't really eaten today, so this is just the perfect meal. It's delicious and decadent and messy, and I'm doing a pretty good job not making a mess over the whole table. So good. So delicious. When I saw it was going to be National Burrito Day coming up, I was like, heck yes, I am all about this. So let's dive into our last story. Okay, our last story is a long one. Today I effed up by uncovering a family secret and making my mother cry. Longtime lurker. This actually happened a little over 2 years ago, but things are still weird. After I finished college, I moved back home to help my mother, who was having some medical problems. My father had passed away while I was at college in a vehicle accident, and my sister had been trying to help my mom while taking care of her own family so she could finish school. While going through some of our father's things, I came across an old filing cabinet in the garage. It was rusty and dusty, but I decided to go through it before hauling it to the dump, just in case there was something personal in it, like birth certificates or tax stuff. Things people keep in those cabinets and then forget about. Going through it, I came across some old family pictures, which I knew Mom would want. Some school stuff from when my sister and I were little, and a manila folder way in the back with paperwork from a courthouse in Alabama. Inside were adoption papers and a change of name papers where my name was listed as the new name. Now, at this point, I had no idea about anything. We had always lived in Oregon, and I had never been treated any differently than my sister. I didn't look exactly like my parents, but neither did my sister. The basics were all there: dark hair, dark eyes, and the inability to get a tan. Who cared if we didn't look exactly alike? Not all kids look like their parents. Anyway, I kind of sat on it for a few hours, just going over the few scraps of paper in the folder, then finally decided to go find my sister. She had left at one point, but my mom was puttering around the kitchen and saw me come in with a stack of photos in this folder. I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask her. We were family and we loved each other. It didn't matter if I was adopted. She was my mother, the only one I knew and cared about. I loved her and nothing would ever change that. So I showed her the folder and asked if I was adopted. OMG, she looked at the folder and burst into tears. I reached out to give her a hug and she just sat down and started talking about poor Mikey. I'm not Mikey or Michael or Mike. Apparently, she and Dad had a son when they were first married named Michael. When Michael was 4, they went to the park in Miami where they had been living. Michael somehow got away from her and was hit by a car. She told me how she was so devastated, and my father was too, but he had insisted that they go and adopt a baby. She hadn't wanted to replace their son like a dog, her words, but he had been so insistent, she had finally given in, and I had been adopted out of Alabama. She told me how it was so hard to learn to love me at first, but when my sister had been born almost a year after my adoption, she felt like she could be a mother again and accept me. I was stunned. I asked her if she had taken her medication because I couldn't believe what she was saying. I had been adopted as a baby, but she was insinuating there was almost a year when I was like the annoying house cat my father insisted on, and she put up with it because she loved him. She told me I could never replace Mikey, but I came into my own as I got older, like a real son. She sat sobbing at the kitchen island for a good half hour while I puttered around the rest of the house, packing up Dad's stuff. My sister came back and immediately asked me why my mom was all haggard and weepy in the kitchen. I gave her a basic rundown, but she didn't believe me and went to talk to Mom herself. Hour later, she's all weepy, helping me pack up stuff. She asked if I was okay. I said yes and left. I didn't talk to my mother for a few days. My sister called me to ask about our arrangement, where I would move into Mom's house and she could go back to her own family. I had been staying in a hotel since the incident. I told her I didn't know, and she seemed shocked that finding out I was adopted would make me turn on Mom. I tried explaining that no, it wasn't the adoption, it was the weird, you weren't really my son vibe I suddenly was getting. Was I overreacting? Maybe. So I worked up the nerve to call Mom and asked if I could come over. She seemed surprised I felt the need to ask. I went over and she had a little lunch ready for us. We sat down and she proceeded to tell me what a weight had been taken off her chest. She was all smiles, telling me now that I was older and it was all out in the open. We could start over and get to know each other as friends. What? What? Who the hell is this woman? I couldn't afford my own place at the time, so I did move in with her, but it was beyond weird. Really too much to go into, but imagine all those motherly touches you expect at your mom's house are suddenly gone. She really went from a mom to a roommate trying to be my best friend in a weird, creepy way almost overnight. She quietly insisted I call her by her first name. First time my sister heard it, she flipped her crap until Mom told her that she had asked me to do it. My sister eventually witnessed enough weirdness that she wanted to talk to my mom about it. This was almost a year out for me, so I begged her to wait a few more months, but didn't tell her that I almost saved up enough for a down payment on a little house across town. I was suddenly feeling so unwelcome. It was almost like Mom had died. When she finally did ask Mom why she was acting this way towards me, Mom tried to placate her and tell her that it was all right, that I was a grown-up and was comfortable with our arrangement. I'm ashamed to say that I felt really good to say no, it wasn't okay, and tell her I was moving out. Right there. She looked all confused and asked why, and I just left. I came back over the next week to get my things, and she cried each time and told me if I left, she would lose the house. I was really torn until she told me she wouldn't be able to find another roommate before the mortgage was due. My mom lost the house, but I made it clear she couldn't live with me, and my sister said the same. She moved into a crappy little singles apartment, and I want to feel bad, but I can't. She stopped talking to me altogether, but my sister says she tries to call her all the time. She told her husband I was ruining the relationship between her and her daughter. I'm still pretty upset, but really only have myself to blame for asking her about the folder. TLDR, found out I was adopted after my parents lost their first son and my mother hadn't wanted me. She was relieved when I found out and could stop mothering me. Left me a bitter man, worried all moms are faking it. That is such a sad story. Can you imagine, like, is this story really true? Could a mom who says that she learned to love her son really just say, okay, we're going to be friends and you can call me by my first name? I just can't imagine that somebody would do that. But maybe, I mean, anything is possible, right? Let's read some comments. Dude, you can't blame yourself for her crappy actions. It's not your fault. You need to know that. The OP writes, I know, really I do. It's just the whole Pandora's box thing. Now that it's happened, I sometimes wonder if everything would have stayed the same if I hadn't said anything. There's no way to cram it all back in the box, but sometimes I catch myself wondering what it would be like if she was there. My niece had a birthday recently at my sister's house, and I was there so mom wasn't. I kind of felt like I should leave after a while because I didn't really want mom to miss the birthday party. She loves my nieces, and I couldn't help but think about how she definitely would have been there if this whole thing hadn't happened. So the guilt that this man is feeling because this woman won't even show up to her own granddaughter's birthday. Honestly, there's really nothing that can keep me from my nieces and nephews. I adore them so much. I don't care if somebody's there that I absolutely hate. I mean, I would care. I would care, but I am going to be there to be with my nieces and nephews. I don't understand how people can kind of just throw away children like that. Wow. The OP makes a lot of comments to other people's comments. Can you explain more about living with your mom after this came out? As in, too much to go into is a teaser for the real story. Really stupid, the OP writes. Really stupid stuff that make me sound like a whiner. Things I took for granted that my mom seemed to do for my sister and I before I found the papers, then didn't after. Mom stuff. Like asking if I had any clothes to put in because she was about to do a load of laundry. Asking my opinion on what to cook for dinner, or even including me in the dinner plans after I was officially moved in. She made single meals for herself unless my sister might be coming over for dinner. Telling me about her day and censoring some of it because I was her kid. She told me a lot of uncomfortable details about a date that she went on once. Going grocery shopping and getting little snacks I liked without me having to ask. Why should she always be thinking about you? But I really didn't think of it that way. It was just little things that I'm pretty sure moms know, like knowing your kids prefer deodorant or that they hate strawberries. I just felt like she suddenly pretended she didn't know anything about me and was doing little things to create distance between us. You know, that would be so heartbreaking, reading that statement. That would be very heartbreaking to basically have this woman who you knew as your mother abandon you in that role and want to just be your friend. Like, what's the problem in her still acting motherly towards somebody? If you adopt somebody as a baby or a young child, wouldn't that, I don't have children, but wouldn't that instill in you like just a motherly role towards that child, and that it would continue to be that kind of a role even if you grew up? Another commenter writes, I created an account just to comment on this. I am a mother myself and wanted to tell you that your mother is a horrible person who doesn't deserve the role and you deserve better. Totally agreed. She should never have adopted you. You don't need to be biologically related to a child to love them like your own. She wasn't able to do that, and it wasn't your fault. I hope you can move forward and find some peace in the future. Yeah, this just seriously, it breaks my heart. He's just going to mourn the loss of a mother. And this woman who's so selfish doesn't even realize that she basically killed off the mother for him, this child that she adopted years ago. I'm my mother's biological son, and I'm treated more like an adopted child because me and my brother have different fathers. It hurts, and I got used to it. Ooh, that's from somebody who commented that. Somebody asked OP, in hindsight, do you remember ever being treated differently than your sister? This is such a mind bender. I would be re-examining every aspect of my childhood, looking for things that didn't quite make sense. That's true. OP responds, I really don't. Neither does my sister. We had no idea. My sister has said talking to her is very uncomfortable because when I come up in conversation, it was like she was talking about someone she met on the street. What is this woman? She's like a psychopath. I never felt unwanted or slighted. We were a pretty easygoing family. I thought we were pretty open with each other. I did spend some time trying to go over stuff in my head and look for something like a weird look or something that could have tipped me off, but it just depressed the crap out of me. One time she spanked me for playing with a stove when I was really small. The gas stove could have taken out the house. Was that a sign she wasn't my mom or that she didn't love me? I don't think so. I might beat my kids one day for playing with fire too because I love them and it's dangerous. It's a crappy thing to say, but it's almost easier to think my mom has some kind of mental disease that made her forget me than go over all that stuff. This is just a heartbreaking post. It sounds like the OP is really adjusting as best he can to his current situation, but I just can't help but think he's mourning the loss of having a mother. And hearing from his sister, you know, if he comes up in conversation that she just acts like he's just some random person on the street, it's gotta be heartbreaking. The feelings of abandonment would be immense, and it sounds like he's managing okay, but hopefully he's taking care of himself. And on that note, that is our final story. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know about your own experiences with maybe DNA tests or any surprises you had in your own ethnicity. And go out and get yourself a burrito on this National Burrito Day. I'm going to be enjoying the rest of my sofritas burritos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in my next episode.